Okay, so I have some thoughts to share about um, about fatherhood. So as I'm recording this, my partner just had a baby about maybe 3 or 4 days ago. She delivered on Sunday, and it's a baby boy. It's a beautiful baby boy, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the journey of being partnered with someone who's pregnant over the last 9 months because I've had a very unexpected experience. Obviously, the large majority of what was experienced in pregnancy wasn't experienced by me, but the process of discovering that you're about to become a father and reconciling that in your mind is one that has been very, very interesting for me, especially considering some of the circumstances of my upbringing as well. And I wanted to talk about that. The first thing is that it was very emotional. So for me, growing up, I didn't have a father. I knew he was out there somewhere, but he wasn't present in my life. I never got to, know what it's like to run to your dad when he's coming back home from work, or sit with him in a chair at the end of the evening and talk about whatever it is that fathers and their sons talk about. I never got to experience what any of that was. And in all of the time that I've wanted to be a father, one of the biggest motivations for me wanting to be a father has been getting the opportunity to give that to somebody else. And when I discovered that my partner was pregnant, and when we made the decision that we were going to go through with the pregnancy, it was almost an immediate shift. And the first thing that happened is that there was this intense, intense outpouring of love from inside me. It was so much that I don't think even describing it as love does it justice. Because every time that I would sit down and talk about being a father, every time I would sit down and talk about having a baby, it would it would be 2 or 3 sentences before I would just completely melt into a puddle of tears because of all of the things that I was feeling. And it wasn't one distinct emotion like fear or happiness or excitement. It was all of it at the same time. But at the same time, it didn't feel like it didn't feel like it was overwhelming in the sense of I can't handle it, or it was overwhelming in the sense of I'm fucked. It felt more like a very warm blanket just wrapping around me every time that I would think or speak about being a dad, and that's something that I did not expect, and I think it goes back to me having the experience that I had growing up, and now being put in a position where I know I'm gonna get to do all of the things that my father didn't do right. Another thing that's been very interesting about sort of venturing into parenthood and thinking about being a father, and I know I'm going to experience this firsthand as my child grows up, is because there's so many aspects of parenthood that I didn't get to experience because one half of my parental unit was missing. There's an overwhelming desire within me to give everything to my child, and I recognize that that's something that could handicap my child if I descend into a mode of parenthood where I'm constantly hovering over him, and anytime that he faces anything, I try to rescue him from it because I never had that. And the last few months has been me sort of trying to figure out how I can approach this where I find a middle ground between those two things. I find a middle ground between giving my child a good father, giving my child a healthy home and a healthy environment where they feel safe and where they feel loved, and also challenging them enough to teach them how unforgiving and how cold the world can be. Because I think it's very important to try to impart that lesson into your children from a very young age. From as early as you can, you need to start slowly teaching your children that the world is a place that literally does not give any fucks about anybody. And the moment the world gets the chance, it will fuck your child over. and it's going to be very interesting sort of finding that middle ground. The thing that gives me a little bit of comfort, and this is from me talking to other people that are fathers to boys, is that the approach that you have when you're raising a boy is it's a little bit more from the perspective of you sort of encouraging them into things and sort of urging them on from behind to go into stuff and to go into challenges, and giving them the bare giving them the bare minimum that you can give them to help them work through those challenges. Because when I've spoken to people who have girls as children, the sentiment that I've gotten from a lot of them is that there's always this desire to be very, very protective and sort of be in front of your child and shield her from everything, because we all know how the world treats women. It's not very it's not very nice. But yeah, for boys, it's like instead of you sort of standing in front of your child and holding their hand and sort of leading them on, you're sort of standing behind them and slowly pushing them into things, which is something that I'm very, very excited for. Another thing that's been very interesting is there's a renewed desire in me to try to work harder at all of the things that I'm pursuing in my life. So I'm a musician. Just before having this baby, I had a tour in London, which was my first international tour, and one of the biggest things that kept me going as I was in London was the fact that I was coming back home to a child. I was coming back home to a family. In the past, since I got to where I live now and started pursuing music here, a large part of the motivation that I have to pursue music and to pursue my dreams in general has been very, very self-centered. It's been very self-serving, which I don't think there's a problem with that. I don't think it's a bad thing for you as an individual to want to go out into the world and achieve stuff for yourself. I think that's a very, very good thing, and there's a lot of amazing things that have come out of people, pursuing their dreams for the sake of themselves. But having experienced that type of motivation and experiencing what I'm experiencing right now, which is the desire to just go out into the world and just conquer it and bring it to its knees for the sake of my family and my legacy. The feeling of wanting to achieve stuff for the sake of your progeny, I think, is much, much, much stronger. And if I were to compare the two, of course, this is me speaking very early on into the journey of parenthood. But if I were to compare the two, I feel like the motivation for the sake of my family is something that can carry me for a much longer period of time and get me through more hard times than the motivation to just do things for myself. I kind of experienced this just before I met my girlfriend. I felt my life starting to stagnate. I was getting to that point in my journey of young adulthood where I didn't feel like anything was worth it anymore, because I was just kind of doing it for myself. And you do something and you achieve something and it's like, oh, I did it, and then what? And then you go to the next thing. For a while that was satisfying, but there's a point it got to where I could feel that the wells of motivation that were inside me to achieve things for the sake of myself were slowly drying up. So yeah, that's been a very, very interesting thing, because for a very long time I've thought that when you become a parent, when you have a child, your desire to do things outside of the family unit or things that further your achievement is kind of reduced a bit. But it's not something that I've experienced as yet. I might experience it, but it's not something I've experienced as yet. I've actually experienced quite the opposite, and that's been a really, really, that's been an interesting thing. So I also wanted to talk about how it feels now that he's arrived. So he was born on Saturday. Him and his mama are still in the hospital. They're going to be discharged at some point this week. but it's strange because it feels surreal. It doesn't feel like he's here yet. And I feel like that's because of the fact that he's not physically in the house with us yet. He's still at the hospital. Um, but yeah, it's just strange. I feel like another thing that's contributing to it is it's so fresh. Um, Everything that happened on Saturday happened very, very quickly, and it happened after a relative period of just mundanity. Like the majority of my partner's labor was very, very uneventful, and then everything escalated within like 2 or 3 hours, and after that 2 or 3 hours, there was a child there. So because of that, I don't think I've had the chance to sort of process everything and come to terms with the fact that there's an actual child here. Um, since he was born, I've only held him like maybe 3 or 4 times in the few times that we've been allowed to go and visit her at the hospital. So I think that's contributing to how surreal it feels and how it kind of feels like he still isn't here yet. Um, but yeah, it's been an amazing journey so far. Um, if you're somebody who's watching this, contemplating whether or not you want to be a parent, I would say you should maybe try it out. I don't have enough experience in it yet to say just how good it's gonna go for a majority of the process because I'm literally at the beginning. Um, but from what I've experienced so far, the bad and the good, there's very few things you can do in life that are going to be better than this.